Hello, packages, parsers, and programs. There's still time to make a New Year's resolution. Let's set fire to that desire to rattle off cliches. No more shifting, no more lists, just good defaults in our midst. Let's do something big to make AppSec shine, like making an app secure by design. And so, this week we talk with Kalyani Pawar about the news of the week, from care sets to coding to CWEs. Think secure and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter. METER. Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny and execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold. Trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. This is episode 366, recorded January 14th, 2026, but it'll come out the week of January 19th. We're just doing things a little bit early. But here early is your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here also early in the year for the first time. Let's all wish a Happy New Year to Kalyani. Hello, Kalyani.
Happy New Year, everyone. Hello. How's it going?
Going very well, and it's 2026, so we at least have to get through, I don't know, the ASW top 26 things to cover this year. Maybe that's something that we'll have to figure out by December. While you're thinking of that, Kalyani, let's remind our listeners that they can save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC Conference 2026 will take place this March 23rd to 26th here in San Francisco. Come say hi. To register using our discount code, visit securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5 SecWeekly. We hope to see you there. And this week, we're jumping straight into the news. Kalyani and listeners, if you haven't had a chance yet, go listen to this past recording, number 365 with Bob Lord. We talked a lot about hack lore, which is another way of saying security myths, and what a few of them are, why they're harmful, and how we can get rid of them, or at least tamp them down. The human condition, I think, tells us we're always going to have a bit of myths, but a lot of it led into ideas of secure by design, and that's why I have a little bit of a plan, a cunning plan, if you will, this week for the theme that I've brought with all of the news articles we're going to cover. But it's been a while, Kalyani. We haven't said hi to you for a while. So just want to see, do you have any New Year's resolutions of your own, or what does your year in AppSec look like you for 2026? Anything exciting, or is it just more of the same?
I think the theme for my year is going to be secure the vibes. So yeah,
secure the
I
vibes. Okay.
whiteboard heavily a lot of things. Outside of work, inside of work, all kinds of vibe coding is happening. So yeah, we are going to secure the vibes.
All right. Well, before we get into too many vibes, let's go talk about securing just normal coding, if you will, the non-vibe part. So I have here one article. It's a one of the early CVEs of 2026 is kind of a boring title: Critical Multi-Part Care Set Bypass Fixed in CRS. And this is basically the core rule set from ModSecurity for their WAF. But the reason I grabbed this was not because, oh, look, here's a fun way to bypass a ModSecurity rule using UTF-7 care set, which is very, very old school technique. But it's more about how did this type of flaw come around? And it was really interesting to me reading this article, and I really appreciated this article from Philippe Zipiteria that goes into details about what happened. And as the article states, it's, quote, not a simple coding error, but an interaction between ModSecurity's design, the way that a rule collection iterates through matches that it hits, the way that rules are chained and execute between each other, and then finally, there's a validation logic that was the core, of the problem, in the sense that it just matched the most recent, or the logic validated only the most recent match, not every single match that it came across. And to me, that's just I won't say common type of coding problem, but it's one that I think we can all recognize, that you might have one bug that comes up, but rather than just fix, hey, why did this security flaw come, or it went into a deep postmortem. So there's a couple more things I want to say about this, but I don't know. Reading through this, Kalyani, do you get excited about postmortems like this, or was this more of just like, oh, another bug, another bug, another bug? What was your reaction here?
I think the first thought that came to me is, like we always outsource all the thinking to different tools, right? Like, oh, my WAF is going to use like all these OWASP CRS rules, and then I turned on the WAF and we have all these OWASP rules. So like now we're all covered, and issues. There's not going to be any security problems, and we're like outsourcing all this thinking to the tool itself, and we're inheriting the blind spots, is the way I was looking at it. It's like, if your entire security strategy is like, we'll buy a control and then just like forget about it, it's like you're betting on someone else's assumptions and you're not threat modeling it correctly. And it's like, yeah, we use good tools and so we're safe, but that's like tool trusting culture, if you can call it that. But like thinking culture could be like, well, we use good tools, so we need to know where they kind of break. It's like, yeah, all these VAFs depending on all the CRS tools, and so the core rule sets, and so it's just like, oh well, this could be a failure mode that is not often directly visible to us. So yeah, I don't think people use bad tools per se, but like people just like stop questioning the way the tool functions. I think that's something that I noticed in this whole, and I think I'm making more culture-driven point rather than like, oh my God, this is a bug and we need to like fix it.
Yeah, I think there was a conversation we had kicking off the year with Chris Weisselpohl from Veracode, and we talked a little bit in the news segment there about fuzzing and security tools, in the sense of, do we know what the security tools have coverage of? And here is an example of a WAF. Ideally, we should be able to trust the WAF and trust the tool because it says it has coverage for, care set bypass, or analyzing care sets, whereas UTF-7, UTF-8, UTF-16, all the fun UTFs in between. But to your point, this feels like we actually we should have some confidence in the coverage, but there was a testing failure here. And that was what was interesting to me, is that this actual rule pretty much never even worked from the outset. And so what we see then, why I also liked and wanted to highlight this particular article, is that they did great analysis about why this happened. And then they said, well, as a follow-up, this is what our fix is. And one of the outcomes of the fix is they added 30 new test suites, or 32 test cases for this. So this is one of those things like, hopefully this type of flaw never rears its ugly head once again, because one of these 30 test cases should capture it. And another thing that was interesting about this is they kind of explain what the design constraints are about it. Because I, as someone who loves regular expressions, understand ideas about back references, look ahead, look behind. But CRS wanted to be pretty agnostic to the regex engine that underlies it. And so they had to avoid using look around patterns, conditional patterns, not using back references. So that meant they had to rely on this kind of iteration or collecting these group of matches and iterating through them. So that was one of the constraints they ran into. And they talk about this a little bit at the very end about other reasons, about other types of solutions they didn't get into. So lock's a long way of saying, probably belaboring one poor rule into, I think, to echo a little bit what you're saying about this security culture in the sense of testing, analysis, and what I wanted to add in the sense of transparency about a post-mortem of a vuln, and being really insightful about how to fix a vuln with test cases, with good analysis, rather than just, oh, here is this one line of code, we fixed the one line of code, and we moved on. So this was, to me, a really great learning experience from AppSec, and I hope to see more of these throughout the year. So that's how much fun we could have with a single CVE for 2026. There is a bit older CVE that we actually didn't cover yet this year. It popped up at the end of the year, and want to get your thoughts on it, Kalyani. This is MongoBleed. So we did not avoid named vulnerabilities in 2025. I'm sure we'll get some in 2026. I don't think we have a named vulnerability yet, but here's another CVE called MongoBleed. It's an info leak vulnerability in MongoDB exploited in the wild. Now, where this one highlighted my attention was kind of where the flaw came from, but I've been doing a bunch of talking. Our audience misses you. I miss you, Kalyani. When you saw this, what was your reaction? What did you think when you saw MongoBleed crop up near in December?
So, okay, when MongoBleed popped up, also, reminds me of Heartbleed. But anyway, we'll save Heartbleed for another day. But like, everyone will talk about memory leak, zlib, and pre-auth bug, and let's go patch it right now and things like that. But I think I'm noticing a new trend here in the class of bugs that are getting filed is, I think, security is moving kind of downward in the stack. Like earlier, like the critical wave of bugs were say missing pre-auth checks or injection issues or some misconfigurations. But I feel like now I'm seeing more of a trend moving towards parser logics and compression failures and a few sharp impossible edge cases in boring infrastructure problems where I sometimes think of infrastructure as it's like furniture where we just assemble it and then we forget about it. And I feel like now more and more of these problems are coming in all these boring areas of infrastructure, and I think it's a interesting trend. I don't think I've seen so many memory issues or parser logics in this short amount of time, maybe the last year or so. Before this, it was mostly there's a lot of XSS going on or things like that. So I just thought this is a new trend that we're hopping towards now.
Yeah, I think XSS just makes me yawn. I get so bored of XSS because we'll talk about that why in a second. But in this one, I think you also noticed a trend of why I was pulling these two particular articles, because even the core rule set one was about parsing. It was about parsing HTTP headers and analyzing them. And there was a logic flaw in how it was parsing the matches that was identifying, meaning it matched maybe a dozen hits, but only validated the last one rather than validating all 1 through 12, for example, each of the hits. Here, again, compression is another common flaw where you can get into length problems and offset problems. And I think I highlighted these because if you are out there as a bug bounty hunter and want to go after hopefully some really big bounties, or you want to play around with some fuzzing or just some code review, maybe the SQL injection and cross-site scripting, you're still going to find those. I hope not. But Parsing. This is where there's a lot of, I think, human ingenuity and human analysis can still shine in the sense of what is this software doing? And is the state machine it's setting up really solid? Or are there weird edge cases that you could nudge this state machine into because of some unexpected input, whether you're repeating a field, you're putting in a field with shorter bytes than it's expecting, more bytes than it's expecting, etc. Because those are some very classic ways of attacking compression or attacking compression in audio, video as well, all these codecs. So I think that's why I wanted to grab these together, as well as if you were ever out there thinking, oh, let's rewrite something into Rust or Go, those compression libraries, those parser libraries, a great spot to start. So that's my still theme of if you're making New Year's resolutions, that's why I wanted to highlight these. So let's move on, Kalyani, because there's a lot of news to get through. One of the other articles I grabbed, this again is from end of 2025. It's the CWE Top 25 for 2025. Now the CWEs, W for weaknesses, is more about the foundational classes of flaws that the CVEs often reference. And we talked a little bit about this last Monday with Bob Lord, with Hacklore, and more importantly about the CVEs and Secure by Design, in the sense of why do we see these all the time? And mostly I just highlighted this article as a reference to see, okay, this was 2025, not to predict what will be in 2026, but what would we love to see go away in 2026? And the first two on this list are cross-site scripting and SQL injection. So honestly, if these disappear off the list in 2026, I would be very happy. I don't know if you're looking at this list, Kalyani, if there's another one that you would love to see go away, or if can we just get rid of those first two and maybe that's enough of a wish that we'll stick with.
Auth logic failures too. I would like to see them go too. I just find it very hard to believe that, XSS injections, auth logic failures, memory issues still remain like top killers in the security world. And I think it's a signal that security is just a hard problem to solve. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do like here that it does actually, it's introduced the CVEs and the KEVs. So these are the known exploited vulns. So that adds out a little bit of a dimension to each of these. And it's interesting just to see that for both cross-site scripting and SQL injection, there were some sieves that were being exploited to a degree that was impactful across those two. One of my questions that I would love to figure out or love to know is, especially for cross-site scripting and SQL injection, how many of those CVEs were identified in code that was actually written in 2025, or is just very, very old code, like let's say 5 years old or even 10 plus years old code, where that vuln has finally been discovered and exploited? Because to me, if it's in older software and it's only just discovered, I like that. I think that's a positive thing where maybe our analysis is getting better. Hopefully our tooling is getting better to identify such vulns. But if these are vulns are being identified in code that was written in 2025, I think that kind of points to what you were alluding to, that development in software engineering remains hard, and AppSec is surely not a solved problem.
Yeah, I think even like older code, newer code, if I could just summarize it, it just feels like security is still a design problem first. And I like if you're writing this code in 2025 and you're not measuring your code against like these kinds of weaknesses, you're potentially flying blind in the security world at this time. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say, it's a design problem, because we talked about CISA, Secure by Design. We were talking with Bob about Secure by Design. And honestly, the design problem for cross-site scripting and SQL injection is actually well known. We actually have ways to design that out. And so that's why I was curious if this is new code that was just, oops, we had that solid design, but here was a coding error that didn't follow. Made a mistake in using the framework, something that's a forgivable vuln, if you will, or this is just old code that wasn't even using a secure design that we know how to use. And here I'm referring to, prepared statements, React, something like that. I think one other thing that's not on here that, alongside, maybe we'll see it in 2026, is that Yes, indeed, there are at least two CWEs around generative AI, LLMs, and specifically prompt injection. So there's CWE 1426 and 1427. There's not going to be a quiz later. Nobody cares about what the specific numbers are. Don't worry. But it's basically CWE loves the word improper. So improper validation, improper neutralization. They're both related to prompt injection, either text coming in that's being a prompt that LLMs didn't realize that this is actually just text and not instructions, and then the output of a prompt injection basically being used to exfiltrate. So let's see if those pop up in the list in 2026. I don't know. Any predictions? I typically don't like predictions, but I don't know. Kalyani, do you like predictions? You want to make one for this type of list?
No, I just had like a realization where I was like, when I was in college, I was still reading off of the CWE list, and some of them are still here. So I don't think I want to make any predictions for the upcoming years.
Probably a smart bet. I guess my only final thing was that, hey, path traversal, my favorite vuln of all time, is there at number 6. So hopefully that's the one that becomes number 1 by 2026. So that will be my, not prediction, but a hope. But I did mention LLMs. We are now in 2026. I have to remember to mention the right year. And Kalyani, we're going to have to cover Gen AI and LLMs because, as you already mentioned, people are vibe coding. But I'll also say, let's set aside vibe coding. People are just coding with LLMs. And one of the questions that come up, and we kicked the year off in this conversation with Chris Weissapol that I mentioned earlier, is that what are the upsides, but more importantly, what are the downsides of LLM generated code with the context of is creating more code, but what's that density of vulnerabilities in there? Are we creating more code and more vulns just because the volume is going up? Are we creating more secure code because LLMs are generating secure code? Or are we generating more insecure code? Basically, we've got a lot of questions. One of the questions is not, will we have job security? Because, as you said, there's going to be flawed code out there for quite a while. But here is an article from corridor.dev. Jack Cable works over there at Corridor, and the article is The State of Secure Coding Benchmarks, Sec Code Bench. And here is an article that focused on one particular benchmark that's specific to Java, but it's about trying to measure, are LLMs generating secure code? And that's why I liked this article, because it's kind of that self-reflection, or from the AppSec industry perspective, saying, yeah, we've got LLMs. We know that they're generating code, but can we trust it? Or how much should we trust it? Or what are the ways to figure out this is more secure code, this is less secure code? And that's why it does a little bit of an analysis and talks about what these benchmarks look like and how much can we trust the benchmarks? Or let me phrase it differently, perhaps, to say, how much do the benchmarks reflect the type of code we're writing? Generative AI is powerful, but it comes with real risks, from prompt injection to data leakage misuse and agentic AI. The OWASP Gen AI Security Project unites a global community of expert practitioners who tackle these challenges every day. Together, they've built practical playbooks, adoption guides, and the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs, resources any team can apply right now to strengthen AI security. And it doesn't stop there. This is open source, built by practitioners, for practitioners, working together to secure generative AI. Visit securityweekly.com/OWASP to use the playbooks and join the effort to protect tomorrow's intelligence today. And so there's a couple things, this is very Java specific, and there's a couple more aspects I'm thinking of here. But you mentioned you were doing some vibe coding. Have you done some own testing of whether your own code is secure, or how are you thinking whether your own code is secure, Kalyani?
I think when I am totally dependent on Cursor to write code, for me, it comes back flawed, like really flawed. Like I'm literally telling it, you're writing vulnerable code, please go fix it. Which I think this whole conversation is making me think of something, which is like, sure, we do have like a benchmark, like security benchmark, a topic of discussion here, but also another thing that I'm thinking of is like, we also have like an incentivization issue, like Like even say in a company, if an engineer writes really fast and functional code at the expense of security, they're still rewarded because it's fast and functional code, right? And I think we have benchmarks working on same lines too. Like, hey, you write fast code, you're writing functional code, you're writing nice tests and everything, you're a clear winner. But like, what about like the vulnerable code that Cursor is creating? Like, it's still like a incentivization rewarding problem that we have, be it like LLM generated code or like human generated code. Yeah, that's just an interesting thought I had when I was reading this article. Like now, sure, we're moving towards security benchmarks, but like initially when benchmarks started coming out, it was just like, yeah, good code, functional code. This is what good looks like, but the LLMs probably don't know what insecure looks like, or they know it, but they're not able to apply it.
Yeah, and I think, and honestly, if you've got functional code, meaning like it's working or it's implementing the feature that was being requested, and you've got test cases, that sounds like a winner to me. I think those are the good incentives. It's then figuring out were there security flaws in there is a tougher question. And that's where we've got a bunch of classic, source analysis, dynamic analysis, fuzzers, et cetera. LLMs can even do this, and that's part of what we're talking about here. One of the interesting aspects of this benchmark is that there were 4 modes that it had. Basically, code generation and code fixing, and that would modify whether it's creating code or it's creating a security fix, in the sense of being security aware. And this is where my go-to joke, I'm going to have to retire it probably soon because I'm belaboring the point, is, that you prompt your vibe coding session with comma, but make it secure. And very much here, the security aware version of the benchmark is there should be, quote, no security vulnerabilities. Or the other prompt about the fix is that, security, that there's actually very explicit instruction in the prompt about there are vulns in this code, fix the vulns in this following Java code. And so where I'm going with that is in the sense of, I think we as an industry are still trying to figure out what does a prompt mean, in the sense of, does the prompt itself generate better code? Does the model itself generate better code? And here I'm defining better as more secure. And that's what this type of benchmark and discussion is walking through. And I think right now we're still going to have to kind of shrug and say, we don't know yet. The conversation with Veracode was saying that roughly of the 4 vuln classes that they threw against a bunch of different models, about roughly a flip of the coin was whether the code generated would have a vulnerability in it or not. So all of that to say is, I like your point about whether it's coming from an LLM or coming from a human. If we just have more code, it doesn't necessarily matter who's generating it. We need the approach and the tools to figure out, is this secure? And a benchmark like this is hopefully going to tell us whether this tool, this process, this human is better at finding those vulns. So I guess it's a lot of wishing. I don't know if there's anything else that we can make come out of that. I don't know. Help me out here, Kalyani.
2026 wish list. More secure
Yes.
benchmarks, more secure code.
And maybe, and part of the reason I'm highlighting an article like this is not to basically say, hey, go check out Corridor, give them free marketing. It's more of, if you as your own internal org, whether it's AppSec or just your software engineering, are using LLMs, how are you referencing whether the LLMs are making you more efficient, or rather than just saying we've got more code, are you generating more code faster? Okay. Is it more secure? Is it less secure? And part of this benchmark discussion helps hopefully think about how you would evaluate that, because some of what it's calling out is that there are a few limitations to a benchmark like this, is that it's just looking at a single file, whereas often vulnerabilities might span multiple files or require interaction between code that, from the source to the sink that crosses different files. It's just looking at one very specific type of vuln. And a lot of the functionality tests weren't actually very comprehensive. So one of the things that this benchmark was trying to do was just say, hey, does this test work, or does this code work in the first place? Does it generate a null? Is it referencing a null, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And then as long as it's working, then it will do the security testing. So there's a lot of things here that's basically saying, I think what's the classic sentence in a lot of papers you'll find in an archive that's like more work needs to be done, or more research is called for. That's what it's boiling down to. More research is called for. Now, there's another thing. Speaking of research or measuring, we were talking a lot about just now of measuring whether the code is secure that's being generated by LLMs. There's a hidden part that I keep trying to touch on or to draw out of our guests or out of the discussions that come across this. And it's not the fault of the guests. It's hard to pin down what is the cost of using LLMs. And here I'm just talking about cost to budget, basically, dollars per token, if you will, to generate code. And this is what this article from Bishop Fox is talking about, the total cost of ownership of AI, the costs not on your budget sheet. And so it's a little bit of just saying, we don't know what the pricing model is really going to settle into from all of these LLM providers, but it does point out a couple things in hidden costs in the sense of there's risk that's going to come from LLM generated code. We were just talking about that just now. And I think another part is that the cost is that you might be generating more code, but you still need a human to just do normal code reviews to maintain confidence in that code, as well as doing security reviews of that code to make sure it's still secure, or you're still spending tools on it. So I don't know, maybe these aren't surprising to you. I don't know that they were necessarily surprising to me, but I guess I just wanted to highlight that sort of a beginning of the year. Let's make sure our AppSec programs are, we're thinking of the comprehensive AppSec program here. What are all the things that could go wrong as we throughout the year start to plan for it? So does this get onto your menu of what you've got on what's on your menu for the year in AppSec, Kalyani, or is this pretty low?
I was actually thinking about this because I've been a part of a couple budget discussions over the last year, which are all AI related, and we're mostly discussing things like tokens and licenses and what does the DPA look like and things like that. But I don't think a lot of people address what it's taking from the attention bank, as I like to call it, because like you said, we're still having humans verify everything that it's generating. And sometimes I think is after all this time and we're fine tuning and reviewing this model and babysitting it throughout and having it, generate the kind of things that we want to generate it. And we still have to verify the things it has generated. I think it's just asking for more and more, and I don't know what is the cliff for this. At what point does it stop? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of our one of the reasons I tried to pull these articles together this week is from a theme, if you will, of just here's some very basic non-LLM involved software flaws, both the core security rules or the ModSecurity, CVE, the MongoBleed one. Bring that into CWEs, talking about what CWEs can we kill off in the spirit of secure by design. And then everyone's using LLMs. Are they using LLMs to help write that better code with that secure by design approach? Or are these LLMs just still introducing these flaws? So cross-site scripting, SQL injection isn't going to go away. And then what's the cost of that? And I love that idea of that attention bank in the sense of we could generate more code, but we still need to pay attention to that code. And I think that's a great way you've identified of how to summarize that.
It's about how you're using the tool at the end of the day, or is the tool using you, as they call it, with all your attention. And I think I've noticed this at startups too, because we're all stretched out pretty thin. And if we're going to invest all our time in making our agents better and still not having secure code, then what are we investing in? And I think I would really love if the VCs are listening, if they can invest in this problem for us, it'd be great. I don't want another ChatGPT wrapper, please. But yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely the area where all the VC funding is going. This is an AI enabled, or this is an LLM backed, et cetera, fill in the blank. So I don't think you'll have a problem finding the dollars there. We'll see. I did want to touch on slightly the idea of like vibe coding, as you mentioned, versus LLM code. And the distinction I'm going to make here is vibe coding, that's experimentation, playing, looking at it. But I think it's fair to say that nobody's vibe coding into prod. But they're using LLMs to generate code developers as part of their process, and that code is potentially going into prod. Kalyani, you've mentioned that you've been using LLMs, you've been doing some vibe coding, as you said. Is any of that code actually going into prod, or is this more of the understanding, the education? How are you approaching using LLMs for code generation right now?
No, not all of it ends into the prod environments, but I think most of the times they're useful for like creating like security scripts, like a simple bash script, which I mean, earlier would take me like maybe 2 or 3 hours to like draft something, but now I can just like run a bash script in like 5 minutes. And I think vibe coding is really useful in that area. Like code that works on my laptop might not necessarily work on yours, kind of a situation. But I also see like a lot of AI generated code make its way into like even like open source repositories. You can see that now with all the AI slop. It's not just code. It's also like like content. If you read it online, there's just a lot of AI slop there too. You can smell the chat GPT off of it. I I however like really sincerely implore people to like whatever they put out in prod, please please verify it. I think that we should not enter an age where we trust the LLMs more than we trust our own ability, our own cognitive senses to generate something that is more secure. I've also noticed times when I feel like I could have generated faster code, but like the agents would have failed me. Or if I ask them to like maybe pen test something and they will like grossly ignore like the big major flaws. And they would go after something like the cores looks off. But like, yeah, we have like say maybe hard coded credentials in there. What about that? So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the internally. I'm taking a very long sigh because I think it's a lot of what we're going to be talking about. I suspect in 2026, when it's related to LLMs, are still going to be the classic vulns and how do we find them, rather than just saying LLMs introduce them. Humans, to be fair, could have introduced many of them. Where else do we think all these LLMs have been trained on? The kind of code? I'll just be curious to see. I'm going to continue to follow these benchmarks, follow other tools to figure out where are LLMs helping us. And I think you made a good point. If it's helping you save time on testing, generating scripts to get your job done, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I'm curious, do you use vibe coding for it?
I don't. So I still like my handcrafted code, and part of the reason is that for me, my daily job isn't focused on generating code in the first place. So that's not my primary. Lines of code is not how I'm being measured. Nor I don't think anybody these days is being measured on lines of code. But the coding that I do is. I still like the learning aspect, and I want to understand what's going on. So I haven't hit any problems where I need to start from scratch, where an LLM might just build up some template for me. I'm just modifying existing code. I'm trying to analyze and tweak some code and either some UI styling logic that being off by a pixel actually makes a visual annoying difference. And LLMs are not so great, again, for a lot of CSS that I've seen so far. Or is dealing with some logic that I want to mentally threat model. And to be able to do that, reading code, interacting with the code is a much better way for me to do that. So I'm very much on the not vibe coding or not using LLM generated code at all. But you have been. I know John has mentioned he's been doing that. And I'm still trying to pay attention to articles like the Set Code Benchmark about how people are doing it and using it. So I'm not ignoring it, but I just haven't found the value. So that's my approach there so far. I guess one other note, I never use it for writing our intros or writing documentation. That's still in my mind, a very human important type of skill to maintain and build on.
That is so true. When I see people using a lot of M dashes in their script, I just know it's like ChatGPT created text, and I just like lose interest in reading whatever
I
I hear.
I
Yeah.
have been using M dashes way before ChatGPT, and I think I do agree that there's definitely a smell to ChatGPT, but
Yeah.
I would phrase it tends to be just purple prose and a lot of long sentences that don't really say anything or just sound like utter cliche. But yeah, the M dash, I will defend that usage. But there's a couple other articles I just pulled in at the very end is kind of more of just references. One is a call to action. Portswigger and crew are collecting their top 10 web hacking techniques of 2025. So last year, they've been doing this for at least a decade. I think it was 12 or 13 years. I just forgot how long. But we talked with James Kettle last year about their top 10 web hacking techniques of 2024. So it's now January. Time to put in your submissions for it. They'll be voting. And then in February, we'll try to get James on again and talk about what those web hacking techniques looked like, the top ones that people admired for 2025. And I would be very curious if there were some LLM related ones. There's going to be a lot of prompt injection, or if it's going to be some very classic but different takes on cross-site scripting, SQL injection, or what I'm really hoping for is some neat parser based types of vulnerability. So go check out portswigger.net. You'll find more details there. And another thing I wanted to call out is just some really cool research. I, as listeners hopefully know by now, always just give a shout out to a synthwave or synthwave adjacent musician at the end of the show because I love music made by people. There's also a musician I followed, Ben Jordan, who is a musician as well as a YouTuber who talks about a lot of audio science, and very much a science educator. He's also been looking into, randomly, flock cameras. So these are security cameras that were originally designed as license plate readers. The company also has cameras that do people tracking instead of just license plate tracking. But Ben Jordan has been highlighting how these cameras are insecure. That's perhaps not a surprise in the world of IoT and all these types of devices. And he's done a lot of work on this. And 404 Media, another source of news of articles that we like to cover, picked that up as well. So I just wanted to highlight, go check out 404media.co. They also got the .com now. Check out Ben Jordan, his work on flock cameras, as well as a lot of his educational work on just how cool music and how cool audio science can be. So it's more of a highlighting what's out there, what's fun. That's what I wanted to hit on that. So as I take a breath, we've gone through a lot of news this week. Appreciate you being here, Kalyani. The Flock article was kind of my final thoughts for the week. Any final thoughts from you, or anything you want to share with our listeners as we sort of are still in January and kicking off a new year?
I hope we have lesser traumatizing breaches this year, is the thought that I've been having. Ever since I got off last year, I'm just like, yeah, I don't want a huge catastrophe.
No catastrophes. We'll see if that happens. MongoBleed, I don't think that was necessarily a catastrophe, but for an end of the year vuln that was exploited and released over the holidays, I'm sure that made a couple incident responders, engineers, and AppSec folks have some unpleasant weekends. So yeah, let's hope that it's not out there. But if it is, let's see some transparency. We'd love to see and encourage transparent postmortems about that. So that'll be the final thing I'll say about that. Thank you once again for joining us, Kalyani. Thank you, everyone, as usual. Please remember to subscribe, check out the show notes, share about us on the socials, and because I always like to give a shout out to humans making human music, check out I Know There's Still Love by Saoirse. We'll see you next time on Application Security Weekly.